In today's video, I'm sharing spring and Easter DIYs for your home decor. Welcome to CreArtive by Nature DIY and Decor. My name is Donna. For our first project, I'm going to be using this jug that I picked up from the thrift store, and I'm going to be using my new favorite paint mixture. I've got some craft paints along with some baking soda, and I'm just stirring it up and creating a pancake batter type consistency. Now I'm going to apply it to my surface, and you're going to need 2 to 3 coats. This paint mixture goes on slick surfaces really well. I've been really impressed with it, and I love the finish that it creates. Allow to dry well in between coats. This is what it looks like after 1 coat of our paint mixture. I am going in and applying another coat, and as you can see here, it is going on a lot thicker. That is okay. You can thin your paint out by adding some more craft paint, but I'm really liking how this is. This is the second coat all dry, and I'm going over this a third time. This time I am smoothing out some of the brush stroke. I did end up thinning out my paint a bit, and I'm really liking the texture. Now it's all nice and dry, and I'm going to add a little detail of twine around the neck. Next, you'll need these spring greenery bouquets from DollarTree. They have them every year. You're also going to need some branches. I went out and foraged these on a nature walk. This is some branches that I picked up in the wintertime, and I allowed them to dry well. I love to add touches of nature within my decor, and branches are such an easy way to do that. So I'm mixing in the branches in with the greenery bouquet. Add as many branches as you'd like, and same with the touches of greenery. Here is our modern farmhouse DIY. I love how simple this is, but it definitely gives that punch of spring that I like. For this next project, you're going to need a wood slice. This is 3.5 inches wide, and some tumbling blocks that I picked up from Dollar Tree. The wood slice I got from my local discount store. I'm going to start off by gluing a total of 4 sets of 2 tumbling blocks together, as you see. Next, I am going to be cutting out this gorgeous rub-on transfer that I got from Dollar Tree. I am going to be using a craft stick, and I'm going to apply it to the top of the wood slice. I picked up these transfers from Dollar Tree last year. I just love them so much. They're so easy to use. You just rub it on until the image transfers onto your surface. Another option would be to do decoupage on top as well. So for some added durability, I've decided to add some matte varnish. I picked this up from my local craft store. You can get Michael's or in my Amazon affiliate store listed in the video description below. And this is the DecoArt brand. So I just give that 1 coat and allow it to dry. So I am creating a base for my wood slice round, and I'm going to be using this square dowel that I had in my craft stash. I'm cutting it so it is the same depth as my tumbling blocks when they're standing upright, as you see right here. Now I'm going to be using hot glue to attach these all together. And I like to work quickly here because the glue doesn't set up fast. But another option would be to use wood glue if you'd like. Use any adhesive that you like to use. So now I'm going to put all these pieces together, and again I'm using some hot glue. Feel free to use wood glue again, and I'm going to work quickly to apply my wood slice to the top and then remove any of the excess glue as needed. For the next part of this DIY, you're going to need a little pot. This is left over from one of those succulent pots that you can pick up from Dollar Tree. I'm going to give it a coat of this Artist Loft white gesso. I like to use gesso on plastic surfaces or anything that's got a slick surface. It really helps craft paint to adhere better, and it doesn't flake off. Artist Loft is a brand put out by Michael's, and I really like the consistency of it. Once dry, you can then add the craft paint color of your choice. I am going to be giving my little pot 2 coats of the craft paint, and I'm going to allow it to dry well in between coats. An alternative would be to spray paint the pots as I have done here. If you choose to do that, allow the paint to cure well. My little pot is all nice and dry, and now I'm going to go in and add some preserved reindeer moss. I'm just going to use some hot glue and apply that to the top of the foam and then press the moss into place. I'm just making sure that I don't cover the center because I'm going to be adding some stems to the middle of this piece. I'm going to use these faux eucalyptus stems that I picked up from Michael's. Use any greenery that you have on hand. I'm just going to cut them down and then add some hot glue and adhere them to our little pot. I find that eucalyptus adds a really modern touch to a piece. Now I'm going to be adding some spring meadow flowers. These are leftovers from a DollarTree Spring pick, and I'm just going to tuck them in around the eucalyptus. Looks so cute. I love it. Now it's just time to add the 2 pieces together, and here you have another rustic, modern farmhouse spring DIY. For our next project, I'm going to be using this piece of wood that I picked up from the beach. I love to collect elements from the beach. There's so many different things that you can collect for DIYs. This stick is really cool because you can see that there's some beaver bite marks. I have used this branch in another tutorial and I just loved it so much I wanted to reuse it. So now using some cotton string, I am going to create a hanger. You could use jute twine, but I wanted the more modern look, so I'm going with the jute twine. And I also think the color of this branch is a really nice modern look. So now I'm going in and adding 3 lengths of the cotton twine to our branch. I'm just roughly spacing them out. Now using some faux spring florals from both DollarTree and Dollarama, I am going to cut them down and create some little bouquets. This could also be used with some fresh herbs. Use whatever you have on hand. Once you have your desired bouquet, then you can just wrap and intertwine the string around your bouquet and then tie it off in a knot. Trim off any of the excess string and then you can hang it on the wall. This was such a simple modern farmhouse piece and I absolutely love it. So for this project, I'm using 2 square wood panels. I picked those up from DollarTree, and I have these garden stakes. I got these from a store called Dollarama, but you could use paint sticks as well, paint stir stick. I am just going to cut them down the same width as these square wood craft panels, and I just snapped that off. It was really, really easy. So I'm going to need 2 of those cut down to size. So now I'm going to be using some tacky glue and some hot glue, and I'm going to glue these 2 pieces together. I wanted this to be the same thickness as our square wood pieces. You will need to make 2 more sets of these pieces. And here I'm just going to measure out where this one's going to sit so I know the length that I need for my other 2 sets. So I'm just going to mark out where I am going to need to make my cut line, and as you can see I've got a registration mark on both pieces, and then I go ahead and do the same procedure as before. Okay, so now I'm going to be gluing everything together. So again, I'm just going to be using a combination of tacky glue and hot glue, and I'm going to be creating a little box by assembling all these pieces. So this one here is the base, and then my other pieces are going to be the side panels, and I'm going to be leaving the top open. So just for an added touch, I'm adding some hot glue along the seams on the inside. Then I know it won't fall apart on me. And then I go ahead and glue my other panel on top of these pieces here. Again, I'm just adding a little bit of hot glue on the seam as far in as I can go. So once the glue is all set, now I'm going to paint this. I am using this vintage wash and I'm applying it all over the surface, and then I'm going to use a rag to wipe it off. This product is put out by Decor. Again, I'll have that listed in my Amazon affiliate store for you all. You can also pick it up at craft stores. Okay, so now it's time to decorate it. I got these particular stems from Dollarama here in Canada, but you can use any florals that you have on hand. I just thought they were so pretty. I believe they're called lavender. So I just cut it down and now I'm placing them inside. And again, I'm using some branches. I love to add this little touch of nature to my projects all the time. And this one looks amazing with these little branches. I just absolutely love how this project turned out. So I love to decoupage, and Dollar Tree has some gorgeous tissue papers in different patterns. I really like the ones with the small flowers, and I just tore it down into smaller pieces, and then using some DecoArt decoupage glue, I am going to be applying the pieces to these eggs. Now these eggs, I have seen them at Walmart. I'm not sure if I've seen them at Dollar Tree or not. For sure I've seen them at Dollarama. They're just plain craft eggs. So what you do is apply some glue onto the egg, press your tissue into place, and then give a coat over top. Now I'm going to continue to add my tissue paper until my whole egg is covered, and I do allow my pieces to overlap each other. Once that is all done, you are going to want to allow this to dry well. All right, so now for the next part, you're going to need peat pots. Now you can get these at Dollar Tree, Dollarama, Walmart, and different garden centers. I'm going to be using some craft paint in these pretty spring colors. I've got like this robin's egg blue, cream, and this pretty leaf green. And I'm going to be applying the paint, about 2 coats onto each pot. Now I'm going to be using different paints on each pot, and I'm going to be using just the paint on the bottom portion of our pots, but you can paint these any way you like. Once you're done, you can allow those to dry well. So I thought for another fun touch, I'm going to stamp tissue paper, and you are definitely going to want to use a permanent ink, and then just use any stamps that you have on hand. Dollar Tree has some beautiful ones as well. Now this is archival ink that I am using. Again, I will have that in my affiliate store, or you can pick it up at craft stores like Michael's. I am going to be using this really pretty flower, and I'm going to start to stamp this white tissue paper. Make sure that you are doing this on a protected surface. Once you have your image stamped out, you can then tear it out, and then I'm going to be decoupaging these onto my pots. Before we do that though, I wanted to decorate these pots. So I am going to add just a touch of lace trim around the top of the peat pots. I just thought it would be such a pretty little touch for these. And then I'm going to go ahead and allow that glue to set up quickly, and then I'll move on to the next step. Okay, so our pots are all ready to go. Don't they look so pretty? I love them. Now I'm going to add on my stamped images using this decoupage medium from Decor. Again, you're going to apply a single layer and then place your image on top and then add another layer of glue over top to seal it all in. So I thought for something fun, I would add some treats. You can pick these up from DollarTree or Walmart. And then I also used some Spanish moss inside these pots, and I placed my decoupage egg inside. I just think these look so pretty for Easter time. You could even leave these sitting out for spring. These pots would be beautiful to put like a little plant inside. I also have some bird's nests in here that I placed on top as well. There's lots of different ways to use these. I'll be showing you how to make those bird's nests next. Okay, so for the bird's nest, you're going to need some school white glue and a container, a stir stick, and some water. Make sure you're doing this on a protected surface. So I am just going to start to add some glue to the one container, and then I'm going to be adding in some water. And you'll want to mix that together. Now, I kind of just eyeballed it. I made it quite liquidy, but I also needed it to be thick enough that it's going to hold together some moss that I'm going to be using. Now, I am using some Spanish moss. Again, you're going to want to work on a protected surface. This does get quite messy, but oh, it looks so realistic when you're done. So you're going to want to start off with a clump of Spanish moss, and I removed any of the debris. So I am going to be using some raffia. I'm just scrunching it up. I thought this would look like dried grass. I know if you looked at some real bird's nests, you'll see how birds use all kinds of things in their nests. So I'm just going to mix the raffia in with the moss, and then I'm going to place this moss into our glue mixture. So you want to saturate this, and then you're going to allow it to dry, and I do have a technique on how I'm going to be doing that. Okay, so I am going to be using another container to keep my moss in. Now, I ended up having to make some more glue mixture, so make sure you definitely have enough of your glue to saturate your moss. You just don't want it to be super, super thick because you don't want to be able to see the glue once this is dried. So I had formed this into kind of a nest shape, and I thought for just something really fun, and again to make it look more natural, I am going ahead and I'm kind of intertwining some branches into the moss. So once you have your branches in place, as you can see, this did definitely make a big mess. That's why the craft mat. I just clean that up, but you're gonna wanna make sure that you kind of create that nest shape. And then I place this on top of a container. That will collect the glue and allow it partially to dry. And then I go ahead and flip that container upside down and I place the nest over top. Again, that just helps to form the shape of the nest. So I thought, just to help to embellish it just a little bit more, I'm going in, I'm hot gluing some branches in, and I'm going to add some green reindeer moss. You don't have to do this step. I just decided to, just for a little bit of an added contrast. You can even add some flowers or some leaves, use whatever you like, or you can just leave them plain and natural. And here they are. I think they look so realistic, and adding a few decorative eggs in there looks just beautiful. Or you could put some little treats, anything you'd like for your spring or Easter decor. Okay, so I'm showing you another way you can use those bird's nests. Use a canvas in the size of your choosing and pry the staples off so you can remove that canvas. Use any tool that works for you. So I'm going to pull the canvas off and then set that aside for a later project. Okay, so our frame is all ready to go. I'm going to create a stain by using some Amish gray put out by Decoart, and I mixed it with a bit of water. Next, I'm going to apply it onto the frame and then wipe it off with a rag. And as you can see, it kind of gives it a weathered and distressed look. So I'm just going to continue to add that paint and rub it off until I get the desired look I like. Once the frame is dry, you can then go in and distress it some more if you'd like. I am just going in with this sanding block. I just kind of wanted to knock it back a bit. I don't know. I just wanted some of the wood grain to show through more. Now I'm going to be using some jute twine and these really fun upholstery tacks. I just had those in my stash. And I'm going to be creating a hanger. So I'm just measuring how much of the twine I need. And then I'm going to be hammering those little nails onto the side. But you're going to want to create some knots on both ends of our string first. And you're going to tack those little upholstery tacks through the knots. Okay, so once you have those tacks in place, now it's time to decorate. So I'm using some branches again. I really like these ones because of the golden yellow lichen that's on them. I am just going to figure out my placement for these. I kind of want a wild look to this, so there's no right or wrong way of doing this, but you want to make sure you've got plenty of hot glue. And then I'm going to start to glue these pieces into place. So I'm just adding a little bit of hot glue underneath the branches and then pressing that into place. Next, I'm going to be adding my bird's nest. Now, this looks so cool. I think this has got to be one of my favorite projects that I've made. I just add some hot glue to the branches that are already there. And then I continue to layer some other branches as needed. So for a little added spring touch, I am going to add these little robin's eggs I made. They're just foam eggs that I painted with robin's egg blue and then splattered them with some watered down brown paint. And that's it. I love this. Love this. Again, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Okay, so for this one, you're going to need a wood canvas panel board. You can pick these up at craft stores. I have a link for you in my Amazon affiliates. I picked mine up from Dollarama. I'm going to be using some wood stain. You can use any color you'd like. I like using walnut. I am going to apply the stain to our wood canvas board, and then I am going to be using a rag to wipe off the excess. So continue to add the stain to the sides of the panel as well. So once you've got the stain applied, you're going to want to allow this to dry well. Next, I'm going to be using some Whisper chalk paint put out by Decor, the Americana Decor line. Again, that's in my Amazon affiliates. I'm going to be applying that to the inside of this wood panel. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the sides of our panel as well. And you don't have to worry about it being perfectly covered because we're going to distress it. So dig out that sanding block and start to sand away until you get the desired look you like. So you can see how the color is showing through, but it still wasn't quite aged enough for my liking. So I'm adding some distress ink in this vintage photo along the edges and just anywhere else that I like. You just apply this using a sponge, and then yeah, you could also go in and use some brown paint or stain as well. Just use whatever you have on hand to give a distressed look. So I'm going to go in and seal this up with some satin varnish. Now, distress ink is not permanent, so I want to make sure that that's not going to rub off in any way. So I'm just being very careful when I'm applying the varnish. You could spray paint this with a wood sealer as well, but you're going to want to allow that to dry. And then once dry, it's going to be time to add our little hanger. So as you can see, I didn't bother to stain the back of our wood panel. You can if you want, it's just personal choice. I just wanted to save on product, honestly. But I'm just adding the string to the back for our hanger, and I just applied that with hot glue. I also find that hot glue sticks better to raw wood. All right. I have this book page paper that I had distressed using some coffee. It's just a coffee dye technique. I'm going to tear it apart just to make it look like it's not just perfect. And then I'm going to be using also some of my distress ink just to, again, just distress the edges where I tore the paper. It's a really cool look. I love using distress ink for this purpose. It really creates a beautiful distressed look. Okay, so I'm using tacky glue to apply the paper to our frame here. I'm going to actually add the glue right onto the board here. Now, you could use a really good glue stick or any other glue that you like. I just really like tacky glue. I find that it has a great hold. So you're just gonna wanna press your paper into place, and then I like to use a plastic card just to spread that out. I'm just using a glue stick here just to help adhere any of the loose edges that I might have had. Okay, so I'm going to allow that to dry well, and I am going to put something flat on the top and add some weight, and that will help to prevent the paper from warping. Once dry, you can then add your bird's nest. I'm just applying it using some hot glue and placing that in the middle, and then I'll be adding some of these little eggs. Again, just styrofoam, some craft paint, and some brown paint speckles, and I'll glue those into place. So I decided I wanted to add some words to our piece. I have these Tim Holtz fun word stickers, and you could cut some words out of some text. Just use whatever you have, or you could skip this part completely, but I just thought it would be fun to add this little touch. So I'm just going to distress the edges again with our distress ink, and this says together is the best place to be. To help hold those words into place, I went over it with some varnish. I love it. I think it turned out so beautiful. I have used this piece now for a couple of years, and I just think it's so gorgeous for the springtime. Again, let me know what you think by leaving me a comment down below. So for this next project, I am upcycling this mint tin that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I'm going to give it a coat of some white gesso. This is a brand called Artist Loft. It's from Michael's. It's a really nice, smooth consistency. You're going to want to give your surface 1 to 2 coats of the gesso. This is a primer that artists use on, say, their canvases or other substrate. It works really, really well on slick surfaces like this. So once it has dried, you can then give it a coat of your favorite craft paint. So I really like this New Life chalk paint from Decor, but I wanted it to be just a little bit lighter, so I added a little bit of cream craft paint to this. And again, just give as many coats as you need until you get the desired coverage. Allow to dry well in between coats. Next, you'll need a piece of dry floral foam that will fit on the inside of the tin. I'll be applying that with some hot glue. So I just place that there. Works really well. And then I'm going to be covering the inside of this tin with some moss. I'll be using green moss. I wanted a really garden and whimsical look. The only thing is, I will not be completely covering the center portion of this. I left a little bit of a gap there, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So next I'll be adding some hot glue just to help to camouflage the moss a little bit, just all around the edge. And on top, as you can see, I didn't go too heavy on top because I wanted to add some little decorative touches. Got a cute ceramic bunny from Dollar Tree, some florals that I had in my stash, and a little bird in my stash, and these pretty Dollar Tree florals that I had from Dollar Tree as well. So I want the lid to stay open, so I'm just adding a little bit of glue like you saw, and then I put it into place the way I want it to stay open. And again, I'll add some hot glue on the back side as well, and that will help keep it in place. All right, so now to add the little decorative elements. Dollar Tree carries those really cute little pieces for gnome gardens. So that is where I got this bunny. I think it was from 2 years ago. So use whatever you can find. I had this little bird in my stash. I've had it actually for quite a few years. And I'll just start to layer all these pieces inside the tin, and I add a little bit of hot glue and press it into the moss. Now just use whatever you have in your stash. Like I said, some of these pieces I've had for years. So now I'm going to continue to add some other decorative elements, some leaves and some flowers. Continue to layer until you get the look that you like. So I finished my little arrangement in the bottom portion of the tin, and now I'm going to add another little decorative element by using these stickers that I got from Dollar Tree. I believe they had them out again about 2 years ago. I removed the little sticky back. It was a foam piece. I am going to be using these wood beads on the back of this. I'll glue 3 of them onto the back of this little sticker piece. And the reason for that is because I wanted it to be more elevated than what that little foam sticker could provide. So you can see how much further it will be. And the reason for that is because I'm going to be gluing it into the moss on the back of the tin. I thought that would be just such a cute little added touch. So if you have too much moss, then feel free to pull some out. I did remove a little bit. So once you have the placement figured out, then you can glue that piece into place as well. And there you go. Isn't this just the sweetest little piece? You can put it on the shelf if you'd like. It would look really cute on a tiered tray. It's such a sweet and whimsical piece for spring. So for the next project, you are going to need a jar. Any old jar will do, and you do need the lid. Any lid will work, whatever fits your jar. I have this tissue paper from Dollar Tree, some decoupage glue, and a paintbrush. This is gorgeous tissue paper. I picked it up from Dollar Tree. I think it was 2 years ago, and I love it so much. It's perfect for spring. I'm just going to rip it down into workable pieces. I'm just going to make sure that some of the floral design remains intact. Now, working in sections on the jar, I'm adding a layer of the decoupage glue. I am using the DecoArt brand. I love this decoupage glue, and it is a matte finish. You could use glossy if you'd like, that's up to you. So I've applied the decoupage glue, and now I'm going over top of it to seal the tissue paper down. I'm going to continue to cover my jar with my tissue paper in sections, and feel free to overlap it. You could also paint your jar first if you'd like, but I wanted a little bit of a translucent look, but that's completely up to you. Once your jar is all covered, you can then set it aside and allow it to dry well. Once dry, you can now work on the lid. I'm using this 3-inch styrofoam ball from my stash, and I'm cutting this in half. I'm just going to clean off the excess little bits that are left behind. Use a foam ball that's going to fit the top of your lid, depending on the jar and lid size that you're using. Using some hot glue, I am then going to press that half foam ball into place. Now, again, from my scraps, I had this old sleeve from one of the kids' old shirts. It was heading into the rag bag, but I thought it was a perfect spring color to create a hat. You might be knowing where I'm going with this one. I'm going to just tack the rim of this hat into place with some hot glue. You do want to create a little bit of a rim, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm just folding it up once and then again twice, and then I have a really cute little rimmed hat. So I'm going to place this piece of fabric over the jar, and I will be tying off a little tuft at the top there in a minute, but first I wanted to glue this fabric into place onto my jar. So I'm working at the back side where you see the seam, glued that to the lid, and now I'm going to create that little tuft. So I have these 2 baby socks. They were left over from another project, and I have this scrap piece of felt again from my stash. It was just this little excess piece. I am going to be cutting out a shape like this, and I am going to be creating some bunny ears. So use any color that you'd like. I'm going to be using some hot glue to put these little felt pieces into place, but I wanted to figure out my placement first, just to make sure I have that glued into place properly. And also, if you need to pull the seam of your hat rim apart, feel free to do so. I had to. So once you got placement figured out, you can start to glue things together. So I am adding the inner portion of the ear onto the socks. And then I'm going to have to trim these down. They didn't quite fit inside the rim the way I'd liked, so I'm just removing any bulk and excess fabric from these little baby socks. These baby socks are so cute. I picked them up at a dollar store. They're really nice and fuzzy, and I thought they would make the perfect little bunny ears. So again, I'm just figuring out my placement, and once I have the desired look, I am then just going to fold them back as shown and hot glue things into place. So by now, I'm sure you figured out that we are creating a bunny gnome. I am going to be using this piece of scrap fabric. It is actually left over from a scarf, and I thought it's made the perfect material for a gnome beard. So I'm just going to cut it down into the shape of a beard that will fit the jar nicely. You could also use some yarn or scraps from an old jacket. I'm going to glue this beard into place. And also, just to let you know, I have made so many gnomes here on my channel. I will leave a link to the playlist down in my description box so you can see all the other ways I make gnomes. So you're just going to glue the beard into place. And I'm also going to start to tack down the rest of the hat into place, just on the lid as shown here. For the nose, I'm using this cute little pom-pom, and again, I'm just using hot glue, placing it under the rim, and here you've got the cutest little spring bunny gnome, perfect for Easter and your spring decor. This guy is so fun and whimsical. You could even put a pack of battery lights inside this guy to have a really pretty glow. Some treats hidden inside would be fun too. So for my next DIY, I'm using these scraps of yarn that were heading for the trash can, and I'm dipping them into a mixture of 2 parts decoupage glue and 1 part water, and I'm squeezing out the excess. I am then placing it into a container, and I am going to start to form a nest shape. I am inspired by nature for a lot of my creativity. So I thought it would be a fun way to create a bird's nest by using these scrap pieces of yarn that were heading for the trash can. And I really like the texture of this yarn. I allow it to set up and then pull it from the container. I then place this half foam piece to create the nest shape to form a little pocket for some little eggs. I really love how this looks so far. Very natural looking. Again, piece from nature, as that's what I love to work with. I've got this branch that's got some forked pieces, and I'm going to adhere this nest to the branch. Again, I'm using just some hot glue, figuring out the placement, and then gluing the nest into place. I have a couple other tutorials showing how I use nests or make nests, so I'm going to leave those video links down in my description box below for you to check out. Here I'm just adding some extra hot glue to make sure that nest stays into place. So once your nest is secured to the branch, you can start to embellish it. So again, I'm using some things left over from my stash, as well as these little bird embellishments. I've got some leaves and little bits of moss, again left over from old projects. I'm going to add a little bit of the moss to the yarn, as I just wanted to add a little touch of green just to help to break up the pattern of that color. I really love this look. I think it looks so cute. I'm adding the large bird onto the branch now. At this point, it depends on the kind of branch you are using, and it depends on how you want to decorate it. I'm now adding the cute little bird to the rim of the nest. It looks like a little fledgling. And from here, I just continue to add the little decorative elements that I had in my stash. Again, all left over from old projects that I had taken apart. A lot of times, these little bits will end up in the trash if you get tired of a project, but I love to be able to reuse little bits and pieces whenever I can. And a project like this is perfect for that. Okay, and here it is. I am so in love with this sweet little bird's nest on the branch. It is a perfect nature-inspired DIY. So for our next DIY, we are using another jar with a lid, and I've already glued on my half foam ball round. I'm using this sock that is left over again from another project, and I'm going to be slipping this sock over top of our jar and the foam round. Now, it is going to be kind of bulky, but I'm going to tie it off first, and then I'm going to be trimming off any excess of the sock fabric. So for the next part of this DIY, you're going to need one of these mesh strainers. I picked it up from DollarTree, and we're going to be using the large size. I also have this thin natural cotton fabric, again from my stash, and I placed the mesh on top of the fabric, and then I'm going to be drawing a circle with a pencil about 2 inches out, and then I'm going to be cutting it out. Don't worry about all the wrinkles. It's not going to affect this project. Just use it as is, and a thinner cotton fabric works best. So I'm just making sure that it is the right size and it covers up the mesh. I'm now going to be using that mixture of 2 parts decoupage glue with 1 part water, and I'm going to saturate the fabric. Once it's fully saturated, you can then remove it and squeeze out all the excess. Make sure your surface is protected, as this is a bit of a messy project. I'm then going to open up the fabric, and I'm going to drape it over the top of the mesh. And then using either a hair tie or an elastic band, you're then going to place that over top where the portion of the mesh is sticking up. Then you're going to set it aside and allow it to dry. Now, my craft room is in a basement, and I have an air vent that blows down, so I always place projects like this underneath that air vent. Things dry quickly. So while the fabric is now drying, I am going to use some beautiful lace that I had in my stash, and I need a needle and thread, and I'm going to tie this thread off on the corner of my lace trim here. And then I'm going to be doing a running stitch along the edge of this lace. Now, again, if you haven't figured it out yet, yes, we are creating another gnome, and this one is going to be a girl gnome, and we're creating a cute little skirt for her. So both ends of our string have got long strands left on each end. And now I am going to be pulling the lace in around our little gnome to create the skirt. And once our skirt reaches the back side of our gnome, tie the two ends off to form the skirt all the way around our sweet little gnome. So our hat is all dry and I've already removed the band. And now you can loosen this hat off of the strainer by just poking it and kind of wiggling it. It comes loose very easily. And there you have a really sweet little hat. So here I have some chunky yarn I picked up from my local dollar store. You can pick it up from Michael's as well. And we're creating some pigtails. I just made sure I had the correct measurement, and now I'm just kind of fluffing them up, and then I am going to be tying each end into clumps. One end is going to be longer than the other, and then you can glue these into place. You will need 2 clusters like this. So before I add the hair, I decided that I wanted to tack down the skirt as I felt like it was a little too poofy. So I'm just adding little touches of hot glue onto the body and pressing the lace into that glue. So now I'm just going to figure out the placement for the hair. And I like to glue the hair towards the front of the body. And as you can see, I'm gluing it near the top. And if you need to make adjustments, feel free to do so. Just, you kind of have to base this off of the type of jar that you have. So I felt it just needed a touch more on the skirt. So I dove into my stash and I'm going to add this little bit of trim to the top of my skirt, and it'll really finish it off nicely. Again, I'm just using some hot glue to put it into place. So I'm adding just a touch more hot glue there where the hair is, and I'm pushing it together. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I really wanted the clumps of the hair and the body to fit underneath the hat, and it wasn't before. Once you've got that all figured out, you will then add some hot glue onto the hair and body and press your hat over top of the clumps. And now you've got a sweet little hat for your gnome. I'm going to tack the hat into place on the back of the head by using some hot glue. And as you can see here, isn't she just so sweet? I just love that little hat. I'm using this trim that I had in my stash, and I'm going to use some hot glue to put it into place. So I'm just working in sections to adhere this into place. As shown, I'm just adding this around the rim. So I started to tie it off, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to tack the front of the rim into place as well, folding it up as shown. And then that way here you can see the face of your gnome a little bit better. I just felt like my rim was so big that it was covering up the face a little too much. And I thought it also gave it a really cute and fun look. And now I'm just going to tie my little trim off in a bow. And we're gonna add our little nose into place. I tuck that in underneath the hat and between the hair. So cute, I love it. You could also add some ribbon trim to the braids if you'd like. Here I've got some leftovers again from old projects, flowers and some leaves, and I'm going to embellish the hat. This will make a really sweet and cute little Easter type bonnet or spring hat. I think it looks so cute. I love this. I really love how this hat turned out. I was so happy. And here she is all done. So perfect for Easter or spring. A really fun and whimsical little touch to your home decor. So as always, I would absolutely love to know which project was your favorite. Okay, so for this project, you're going to need a splatter screen from DollarTree. You want to start off by removing the handle, and I selected the one that's got like the handle at the middle of the splatter screen, and it has a screw, so it came off very easily. Now I am going to be using some heirloom white satin spray from Rust-Oleum, and I'm going to give it 2 coats of the spray paint. I'm now using this floral foam from DollarTree, and as you can see, it is sticking out quite far, so I am cutting that piece in half. And then I am just going to trim it up just to make sure it sits evenly on the top of the splatter screen, and I'll use hot glue to adhere it. So as you can see, I am working on a craft mat, and as it starts to set up, you're going to want to lift and move the piece, otherwise the glue will stick to this craft mat. So just to help hold the foam in place, I am going to create some wire anchors, and I'm just going to push those through the screen into the foam and just press down to make sure it sits flush. I will then use a bit of hot glue just to help hold it all together. So once you have your foam all nice and secure, you can then go in and cover up the foam with some moss. I chose to use some Spanish moss, but feel free to use any moss that you'd like. Again, I am going to use my wire pins to help hold it into place. So now it's time for some DollarTree florals. I love these florals that they keep bringing in from spring to spring. I think they are just very good quality. I have trimmed down to the desired size, and you can continue to snip them down with some wire cutters as needed. And I start to place the stems into the foam. Now I'm choosing not to use any hot glue. You can if you'd like, but I like to be able to reuse these stems if I get tired of a project, so I chose not to glue them. So I am creating a asymmetrical design here, but feel free to create any design that you'd like. I'm starting off by using my greenery to fill in the piece, and then I will go in and add the florals. So this is the beauty of a project like this. You can create any style that you'd like and use any florals that you have on hand. Or if you see something beautiful that's new in DollarTree, feel free to use that. I also selected some items that I had in my stash that I had left over from projects last year. Again, these are all florals from DollarTree. So I just wanted to create a little bit more balance and add this purpley pink color throughout my piece. Again, these pieces were in my stash, so I am just going to place those in, and then I will add another element. First, I'm going to add a hook so I can hang this piece up. I am again using some floral wire, and I am just going to flip my piece over once I decide where the top is. And I am going to bend the wire so it can fit into the rim of the splatter screen. And then I am going to use some hot glue to glue the straight ends in place. So I want to camouflage my wire, so I'm just using some chalk paint that's the same color as the spray paint I used. And then just allow it to dry well. So I always love to be able to add a touch of nature to my projects. And I am just going to use these little branches that I picked from a nature walk. I am just using some hot glue and slipping the ends into place. Feel free to use some bark or other type of branches. Just go looking and seeing what you can find out in nature. And here is the beautiful Dollar Tree splatter screen DIY. I love how this turned out. It's very fresh and spring, and it looks beautiful hanging on the wall. I found this beautiful jar. It was a very unique shape. You're going to need a container for mixing, a stir stick, decoupage, glue in matte, and any craft paint in your color of choice. I am going to start off by removing the tag on the bottom and then giving it a good cleaning using some rubbing alcohol. And then you may need to remove any lint that's left behind. Okay, so now I am using my craft paint and I'm adding equal parts of both the decoupage glue and the craft paint, and then giving it a really good stir. Once you've got that all mixed together, you're then going to pour the mixture into your jar and tilt and swirl the paint around on the inside of the jar. So I chose to mix some decoupage glue in with my craft paint, as this will help it to adhere really well to the inside of the jar, as well as help the paint to go further so you can use less paint. Continue to mix the paint and decoupage together until you have enough to coat the entire inside of your jar. Once coated, turn it upside down to allow it to drain out. And then you can set it underneath a vent if you can, or set it aside to allow it to dry well. Once dry, you may need to clean up the edges a bit, and that's okay. I just use my fingernail and a little pointed knife just to remove any of those dried bits. I am going to show you two different trims that you can use around the top of this jar. I really like a rustic look, so I love to use some jute twine. This also gives it a bit more of a modern look as well. So I'm just wrapping it around the top several times, and then you can tie it off with a bow. So now I'm going to show you another way, and that's using some lace from Dollar Tree. I am just going to wrap a long piece around the top and then tie it off in a bow. This gives it a bit more of a shabby chic look. It looks so pretty, and you can see how different just changing out the trim is to create a very different and unique look. Now it's time for some florals, and again I'm using these beautiful greenery bushes from DollarTree. I'm just pulling the wires apart and then kind of weaving them together to create a look of a bouquet. I think these are so beautiful. They look so realistic. It looks like I went out into a wild meadow to pick these florals. I am then going to place them into my jar. You could leave it as is, but I chose to take it a step further and add some branches. Again, these are branches that I picked out on a nature walk. So I'm just adding a few more stems that I had trimmed down to the base of my little arrangement. You could use some floral foam if you desire, but I want to be able to reuse these pieces, so I'm just tucking them in loosely. This is such a fun and beautiful piece. It definitely looks like I went out into a meadow to pick some wild flowers. Hooks from the hardware section. There's 5 in a package, and you can see that they are kind of like an aluminum or a steel. I'm using a sanding block and I'm going to scratch up the surface. I'm only going to need 3 of the hooks for this project. You can use a rag to clean off the dust. Now you will need some hydrogen peroxide in a spray bottle along with some table salt. Now you're going to generously spray the hydrogen peroxide on the hooks and then sprinkle the salt on top. You can do this repeatedly throughout the day, and what this is going to do is cause corrosion, and I really wanted a very distressed look on these hooks. This is day number 3 and the previous was day number 1. You can see the difference here. Now, this is a tin can that I experimented on over a year ago, and as you can see, it continued to rust. So if you wanted to stop rusting, I definitely recommend giving it a coat of clear matte spray paint. Once I have the desired corrosion, I then washed it off and I used a scrub brush to get off all that salt. Here I have a piece of lumber that was in a scrap pile, and it's really nice and weathered. And I'm going to anchor these hooks to that lumber. I'm just finding the center to decide where I want to place my hooks, as I do want them to be somewhat even across the board. And once you have the measurements in place, you can then place your hooks into place to make sure you have the desired layout. Here I am using some Gorilla Glue and some hot glue to apply this to the board. The Gorilla Glue will give the long distance hold that you need, and the hot glue will give that instant hold. So for another decorative element, I'm using these upholstery tacks. These were in my stash and I love the way they look. You could definitely use the screws that these hooks came with, but I didn't want to bother with trying to distress those little hooks, and I knew I had these little nails in my stash. These will also help to hold the hooks into place. So now it's time to create a hanger. I again am using this jute twine that I got from DollarTree. This particular one is the Crafter Square. It is thicker than the twine that you find in the hardware section, so I really like to use it. So you're going to wrap it around one end and then tie it off in a knot. Do not snip off the end that's attached to the spool. You just want to tie off or cut off the loose end. You're then going to figure out how long of a hanger you want to create, and then wrap the other end of the jute twine around the opposite side of your board. Again, tie it off in a knot and trim off the excess. So for the next step of this project, I'm using these supplies from my stash, again from Dollar Tree. I picked up these beautiful pictures last year and these frames earlier in the year. I'm just removing the backing and the glass, and then using the glass, I'm going to place it on top of my image and trace around it with a pencil to get the correct size needed to fit inside my frame. So then you can just trim off the excess using some scissors and just place it back into the frame to make sure it fits. Then you can assemble your frame back together. I do pop off the stand here, and you can set that aside for a DIY in the future if you choose, and then place all the pieces back together. So once you have all 3 frames done, I have decided here to add some words to those little plates that you see on the bottom. I'm just trying to find some words that will fit inside. These are from my stash. I honestly can't even remember where I got them, so I might have been Michael's, I'm not sure, but just dig in your stash to see what you can find. Here I'm using an eraser just to move the word around. And I decided to back these words onto a piece of cardstock. I just found that the words weren't quite thick enough and they kept on falling down in the metal plate. So depending on what you use will depend on whether or not you need to do this part. You just have to kind of play around until you get the right thing to fit inside the plate. So once I have my cardstock cut down, I am then going to use some tacky glue and attach my word onto the cardstock. And then I slip it inside in the metal plate, and you'll see how much better it fits inside. All right, so now it's time to assemble all these pieces together. I have my frames all laid out underneath the board, and then I'm creating some hangers to attach onto my frames so I can hang these beautiful frames on my hooks. Again, I am using some jute twine as I really love the look that the jute twine gives this. I flip all my frames upside down once I have my twine cut, and then using some hot glue, I'm going to glue these pieces to the back of the frames. So you're going to flip them all back over and hang it on your wall. I absolutely love this so much. I could see a beautiful bundle of flowers hanging off of these hooks, or you could even hang a towel. I love the way these frames turn out, and I'm so glad that I was able to use some Dollar Tree stashed items that I had hidden away. So you're going to want to grab a beautiful gift bag from Dollar Tree. I picked this one up quite a few years ago, and it has this really pretty bluebird with flowers. and it's an embellishment. I pulled that off, and I am actually going to be using this again, but I am going to be doing a lot more to it. So I'm going to take this bag apart. I want to use the front panel of this bag, and so I'm just going to cut that out. This is one of those projects that I had done a couple of years ago, and it is still one of my favorites. So I also am going to be removing the handle. So I'm going to continue to cut it down. I am going to be using my paper trimmer now, as I want to have a straighter edge. You can see here there's some holes at the top, so I'm just going to use the trimmer to cut that off and then clean up all my edges. Okay, so I'm using my tacky glue again for this. I am going to generously apply some to a piece of chipboard. Now, this is from the back of a calendar. You could also use like cereal box or something like that. Now I'm using tacky glue again because it has really good adhesion, especially for something like a gift bag. A gift bag I find is a little thicker and it has a bit of a plastic coating on it, so I know that this tacky glue will work well. I spread out the glue using a plastic card, and then I press the image into place and I spread it out using a bone folder. If you get any glue on the surface, just quickly wipe it up with a rag. So this is a wood panel that I had picked up from Dollarama. I still believe they have them for those of you who are in Canada, but you can use any type of wood sign that you have in your stash. I'm going to be applying a few different colors to create a stain. I have got a light and a dark gray, and I'm just adding water to it. That way here I can get it to soak into the wood grain, and then you can go ahead and add some brown as well if you'd like. This is just an optional technique. Again, just use whatever you have in your stash. So I'm just going in and removing a bit of the excess paint if I got a little bit too much, and I just continue to add my colors until I get the desired look I like. So next I'm using these cherry blossoms from Dollar Tree, and they still have them. I saw them in the store recently. I pulled off the blossoms, and then I am going to be painting them to match my design. So I gathered up some colors that I thought would work well. I compared them to the image on the bag, and I am going to just be mixing them onto the painter's lid here. Sorry, it's an ice cream lid. You can see how well those colors match on that image there. So again, I'm going to be using some water. I want this to be able to soak into the fibers of our flowers. So I just left these flowers on the branch just for ease of handling. And then I'm going to start to apply the paint onto the blossoms. I want multi-tonal, just like the original flowers. So I'm just going to go in with different colors until I get the look that I like. So I'm just going to do a bit of a comparison to see how these are looking so far, and they're looking great. So I'm allowing those flowers to dry well, but while that's happening, I need to attach my image to this board. The board is all nice and dry. So again, I'm using tacky glue. I flipped my image upside down onto the board so I knew where I needed to place the glue. I am using a combination of hot glue and my tacky glue, as you can see right here. And I'm going to just flip it over quickly before that hot glue sets up. Press the image down into place. Now, a tip I like to do is actually flip the image over and then add some weight to the top, and that will help to hold it into place while it sets. Now for that touch of nature. I dug into my stash of branches again, and I wanted to embellish where the bird is actually sitting on a branch. And I thought this would work great. So I'm attaching these using some hot glue, and I will just figure out my placement and then add the branches where needed. So I have my branches in place, so now I am going to add that bird embellishment that I had pulled off. So to put it back into place, I need to use some foam tape. That will help to create a sticky surface that's at the same height as my branches. So I'm just adding the foam tape wherever that bird image is going to line up on the image on the bag, if you know what I mean. You can just see here how I'm just covering just certain portions of this bag because that image resembles the image that I'm going to be attaching. So I have placed foam tape on the bag as well as the back of my bird image, and then I'm going to be just making sure it works and that I've got enough foam tape. And I do. So now I'm just going to start to pull off the protective backing, and then I'm going to stick the pieces into place. So one thing I did do was left a section on this particular bird image. I left it open because I needed that to fit over the branches. So I'm just going to start to put this into place and then start to remove the other backing and press that into place. And you can see how cool this looks. Now I decided that I'm going to just add a few more branches. I felt like I just need a little bit more here and there. So I'll continue to do that, and then we will add our flowers. So our flowers are all dry. Aren't they beautiful? They match up so well with our image. I thought because I've got a lot of like a 3D effect here, I thought it would look so good to add these flowers in amongst the branches. So continue to add flowers until you get the look that you like. So now I'm adding a frame around our image that will help cover up the edge of the board that you can see. So I'm just cutting down some branches to size, and then I'm going to use some hot glue to put them into place. Okay, so I have my image all framed, but as you can see the foam tape that I used around the bird. So I am going to be covering that up using some trim. You can use some string as well. Now I'm going to be using my tacky glue to adhere it. I'm not using my hot glue because I didn't know how my foam tape would react. I didn't want it to melt. So I'm just going to go around the image of the bird with this trim until all that foam tape is hidden. So you can allow the glue to dry and then it's ready to be hung. This piece already had a hanger on the back, so it was great. I absolutely love this. It goes into our bathroom every spring. It is the perfect little spring decor touch. Okay, so I'm going to be decorating some more peat pots. I think they are such a pretty little touch for springtime, and they are so inexpensive to decorate. So again, I am just going to be using some hot glue, and I'm going to add some lace trim around the top edge of the pots. So once you have the lace in place, you can then cut down some little pieces of some dry floral foam, and I am going to be gluing them into place into our little peat pots. So now I'm just adding a little bit of my Spanish moss inside just to cover that up and to kind of create like a nesty look. And then I'm going to be using these beautiful greenery bouquets from DollarTree. I don't know if they've got them again this year yet or not. My store doesn't, so if you know, then pop a comment down below. So I'm just going to trim these down and then I will start to put them into place. So I'm not using any hot glue for this. I like to be able to reuse these little pieces in other projects, but if you want to, then feel free to do so. So here are the little pots all ready to go. I'm going to show you at the end how I use them. So I have decorated some more peat pots. I dry brushed some craft paint onto the bottom part. And this is robin's egg blue. The other one was a cream color. Now this of course is optional. You can do these in any color you'd like for spring. Again, I'm adding a touch of lace to the top of these little pots as well. So this is an option if you don't like the natural color of the peat pots, and here are the peat pots left, again, natural. And I placed them in this cute little wooden box that I had on hand. It was gifted to me a long time ago, so this is a great way to decorate a little space in your home decor. So this next project is a really quick and easy one. I have this easel that I got from the thrift store and I gave it a coat of this heirloom white Rust-Oleum spray paint. I allowed it to dry well, and now I am going to be going in and distressing the edges, creating some wear marks by using a sanding block. You can distress this as much as you'd like. So I did distress this easel for the next project that I am going to show you. And I just wanted to show you here what the projects look like together. This beautiful piece of art that we are going to be making next. Okay, so now for our spring art piece. Use colors that you love. I'm using deep turquoise and cream, and this canvas size is 10 by 10, but feel free to use any canvas size you like. So I am going to be adding the paint just messily all over the canvas, and I'm adding a little bit of water. That will just help create a nice loose look. So while the blue turquoise paint is still wet, I'm going in and I'm adding some cream paint here and there. And then I'm going to go over it with a rag. I wanted to create the look of a sky that's slightly overcast, so I just think that is a really, really pretty look for spring. So I'm allowing that to dry now, and then I'm going to prep the other part of our project. Again, I'm going to be using my warm white and my robin's egg blue paints, and I'm going to be using a selection of some different papers. I have book page, some scrapbook paper, and some ledger paper. I am going to be adding some paint. I'm using a bit of a wet paintbrush, and I'm just going to apply the paint just all over the surface. And you don't want it to be super thick. I want a bit of the text or the lines from the ledger paper to show through. And then you're going to allow that to dry. Okay, so once dry, I am now going to be using this raw umber paint. It's just a really dark brown, along with a stiff bristle brush and some water. And I'm going to be creating some splatter marks onto the paper. You're going to want to do this on a protected surface. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside and allow them to dry. I think they turned out so pretty. So now I am going to be going over our canvas and I'm going to do the same technique, except this time I'm going to be tapping my paintbrush onto a pencil. That is creating some larger drops, and then I'll go in and add some smaller splatters by just running my finger on the bristles. If you end up getting too large of a drop, just feel free to take a rag and dab them off. And then you can just continue to add some more if you'd like, or you can just set it aside and allow it to dry. Okay, so I have a selection of little pieces of shredded paper. I've got some sheet music in 2 different color tones. And yeah, I just ran that through my paper shredder. So I'm going to be using some matte decoupage glue, and what I'm going to do is start to apply some glue to the surface, and what I'm doing is creating a nest shape. So you'll just want to start to apply the paper and then of course add some glue back over top, and you're just going to want to continue to overlap all your papers to get a bird's nest type look. If you need to rip your papers down into a smaller size, feel free. There's really no right or wrong reason, just as long as you continue to lay your papers until it looks like a nest. So I'm allowing my bird's nest to dry, and while that's happening, I'm going to cut out some egg shapes out of these papers that we decorated with the craft paint. So I'm just going to roughly just cut them out with my scissors. There's no right or wrong way of doing this either. And as you can see, we are creating the look of robin's eggs. Okay, so our eggs are all ready, so I'm just going to figure out my placement for them, and then I will glue them into place. If you need to add some more papers, go ahead and do so now. I thought I needed just a few strips behind the eggs at the back side, and then I will just add my little eggs and then continue to layer as needed. So now that you've got your eggs in place, you can add a few strips of the paper at the front of the eggs, and that will make it actually look like they're nestled within the nest. Okay, so you're going to allow that to dry well, and then once it is dry, we are going to add detail. So we want all these pieces to really pop. So what I like to do is go around the edges of our little paper embellishments and add some black ink. Now, this is optional. You could probably use a bit of stain and that will work as well, but this is just something that I like to do. So I'm doing just a little bit of shading. You don't need to do this part. This is just something I like to do, and I'm using some watercolor pencils. A little bit of ink or a marker would work well too. Okay, so I've allowed the paint to dry, like the watercolor paint, and it's still wasn't quite satisfied with how everything was looking, so I decided to add some archival ink to the edges. That will give a bit more of a distressed look. Now again, this part is totally optional. This is the sepia color in the archival ink, and archival ink is permanent. So I'm going to go over this whole entire piece now with some matte decoupage glue. You could use a varnish as well. I just wanted to seal everything up, and then I'm going to allow it to dry. So I felt that the bird's nest still didn't quite pop enough, so I went in and I defined the pieces of paper with my black pen. I should have done that before I sealed everything up, but I didn't. And here I'm just adding a little bit more distressing around the edges, and I've allowed that to dry. You can go over it and seal it up again with some varnish or decoupage medium if you'd like, but that is it. Isn't it beautiful? And it looks so good on the easel that I shared with you before. Okay, so for this project, you're gonna need a jumbo plastic egg along with a candlestick. I've picked this one up from DollarTree. I've just scuffed up the bottom of this egg as I want to attach the glass candlestick to the bottom of this. And I needed some grip for the glue. So I'm using epoxy adhesive. I just picked up mine from my local dollar store, so you'll just have to follow the manufacturer's instructions for your glue. So I'm just adding it to the rim of the candlestick, and then I'll put it into place where I scuffed up the bottom of the egg. You'll want to hold this into place until it sets up enough that you can let it go. Again, just follow the instructions on your packaging as to know how long you need to let this cure. Okay, so now I've taken this egg outside and I spray painted the whole thing with my heirloom white paint, and you'll want to make sure you let that paint cure so it doesn't chip off of the plastic. Once cured, I am now going to be adding some rocks to the base of this egg because I needed that weight to help stabilize my piece. Now I'm going in and I'm adding some floral foam. I like to trim off the corners. That just helps to create a bit more working space if you need it. And then I'm going to attach it to the inside of the egg with some hot glue. I'm adding just a few scrap pieces just to help stabilize the larger one. Glue as needed. Okay, so for this project, I am using Spanish moss and I'm just tucking it in around the foam. I don't want to fill it up too densely as I need some space to work on to add any embellishments that I want. So I'm just going to glue this in place. Another option would be to just create some little wire bobby pins to help anchor your moss down. Okay, so our moss is all in place. Now go into your stash of little figurines. I have all these cute little garden gnomes. I like to use these outside in my front yard in the summertime, but there was still a bit of snow during this time, so I thought it would be fun to add these in a little garden gnome, a little gnome garden inside this egg. So I'm just gluing these little pieces into place. And I just needed to make sure that the lid would fit over top. I thought we would make just a fun little surprise inside this egg. add any embellishments that you like. So I'm going to go in now and add some green lichen as well as some green moss. I wanted to just break up that gray color a little bit to make it look like spring grass is peeking through the ground. So you can add as much as you'd like. And again, add as many cute little embellishments as you like. So now I'm just going in and adding that little touch of nature that I always like to add to my projects, and that is adding these nice little branches. I like these because it looks like it's got little leaf buds on them, so it looks like that a tree has got their little leaf buds ready to pop. So for another added little touch, I am going to be adding these DollarTree florals as well as these Dollarama flowers that I picked up. I'm just trimming them down to size, and then you can use a glue gun to adhere these if you'd like. So you can add as many little decorative touches as you would like that's from your stash. This is such a unique piece, and it looks so beautiful for Easter decor or even spring. Okay, this is a really fun Easter project. You'll need some plastic eggs. I have got this a larger one as well as medium ones. You'll also need some chunky yarn. I picked mine up from Dollarama, but you can get this at Michael's as well. So I am going to be using these two colors and some pom-poms and some baby socks. And we're gonna make some little boy gnomes out of these little eggs. So I am just, as you can see, tying the yarn off in a chunk. I want all the fibers to hold together. And that's just using some basic cotton string. I'm just trimming off the excess, and then I'm going to be making sure I don't cover up that hinge. I want to decorate the front side of this little guy. So I'm just trimming this yarn down to the length I need to create a beard. So I'm just fluffing up the yarn, and then if you need to trim it off, you can, but I'm going to be using some hot glue, and I'm going to attach that yarn chunk to the front to create my little gnome beard. Okay, so now we are going to be using this baby sock. I got mine from Dollarama, but you can get them at Walmart or Dollar Tree. Just find whatever style you'd like. I'll just slip it over the top, and as you can see, we are not covering up the seam of the egg. Right now, this is looking like a little Smurf. It's kind of cute. So I'm going to start to glue the hat into place so it doesn't slip off of our egg. Next, I will be using a pom-pom for the nose. You could use a wood bead as well. Just use any size you'd like as well as color. So I'm just adding just a bit of hot glue and gluing that into place. Next, I am going to tie off the top of the hat. You don't have to do this, but I kind of like the way it looks. It just looks like a little pom-pom on the top of the hat. So I've now gone into my stash and I gathered some greenery and some florals, and I just cut them down to size. So just a little tip, I'm just using my scissors to prevent the little guy from rolling around. So I'm just now adding the greenery and some florals to the hat, and it'll look so pretty for Easter time. So we're going to do something really fun with this guy, but first I wanted to make a girl gnome. So I'm using this purple egg and again some of this chunky yarn in pink. I split the yarn into 2 pieces, and I'm going to be using some string to tie at the top and the bottom as I am creating some pigtails. So once you've got these both trimmed down to size, you can glue them into place on the sides of the egg. You just, again, want to make sure that the hinge is at the back side if your egg has a hinge. And you can see the placement there. You kind of want them to be placed near the front. Okay, so again, the same thing. We are going to be using a baby sock for the hat. So again, you just want to slip that over and don't cover up the seam of your egg, and then you can just glue it into place as needed. Next, you can add your nose. I'm using this really cute little white, no, sorry, it's a light pink pom-pom. It looks so cute. And then I am going to fold over the hat to make it look like it's kind of floppy hat. And then I'll be decorating this one as well. She turned out so cute, and I made this yellow one as well. I made a total of 3 different ones. And now for the fun part, we're gonna put treats inside. I thought this would be just such a fun way to do a little gift for kids to go for an Easter egg hunt. Okay, so now I am making a large gnome using the jumbo egg. You're going to be doing all the same steps, it's just going to be on a larger scale. So the sock was a little too big for my liking, so I'm just trimming that down a little bit, and then I will put the sock into place for the hat. Again, remember, don't cover up that seam. So I am using a jumbo pom-pom in the color yellow for this guy. I thought it would go nicely with the golden egg. And then again, I'm just going to tie off the top or fold it over, whichever style you'd like, and then you can decorate. So our large gnome is all ready to go, and now I am going to fill this up as well. So isn't this seriously just such the funnest little Easter gift? I had really a lot of fun creating this little guy. So I placed these in some of those decorative peat pots that we had made. They make great little egg cups for these guys to help keep them upright. But if you're doing a little Easter egg hunt, then of course you don't have to do this. My golden egg has a flat bottom on it, so it stood on its own perfectly well, but you could place that in a pot or a basket as well. I absolutely love these guys. They were so fun to make, and I hope you enjoyed them as well. So I found the perfect spring piece at our local thrift store. It's a charity shop. This was only $3, and I think it was an old candlestick. I'm going to transform it into a beautiful spring floral display. I'm going to start off by adding a piece of floral foam and a found bird's nest. We found this one on the ground. And I'm going to just cut out a notch in my piece of floral foam just so that the bird's nest can sit snugly right in that little spot. And I'll be using some hot glue to adhere everything. Here I am creating some bobby pin anchors, and I'll be using these to help attach the bird's nest to the foam. So here I'm using some hot glue, and then I will take those floral wire bobby pin anchor pins, and I just push them through the center of the bird's nest, and it really does a great job of holding it in place. Now I'm going to add some Spanish moss around the foam base just to cover it up, and I'll be using the floral pins to hold that in place as well. Once I have all my foam piece covered with the moss, I now go in and add some DollarTree flocked florals. They're a huge spring hit for me this year. I absolutely love them. So I worked some pieces in around the front, around the bird's nest, and I also had added some pieces to the back side. Here I'm just using a little bit of hot glue to attach some of the pieces. Now I'm just adding some dried twigs that I had on hand, and I like to add twigs whenever I can. I just love to bring nature indoors, and I feel that this just really ties the bird's nest in nicely in amongst my florals. Now I'm just adding some cute little hand-painted styrofoam eggs that I had into the center of the nest. I add 3. And that's my completed piece. Okay, so DollarTree has had these wire baskets for quite a while. I have removed the handle for now, and I'm going to set that aside. So I picked up these artificial pussy willows. I wanted to get some real ones, but they weren't quite ready when I had made this project. I found these at Dollarama, but I have also seen them at Michael's as well. So I'm just going to cut them down to size, as you can see right here, using my wire cutters. So next, I'm going to be using some white floral wire, and I'm going to cut that down to size as well. I think this one I cut down into 3 little pieces. So I'm bending these pussy willow stems into an arched shape, and then I'm just kind of weaving them into the wire basket a little bit. And then if needed, I'm going to be using the white wire to attach the pussy willow stems to the frame. You're going to continue to add your stems and overlap them until you get the desired look that you like. Okay, so now I'm going to be using this coconut fiber basket liner. I picked mine up from Dollarama, but I've seen these at Dollar Tree as well. So I'm just gonna line this basket with the coconut fiber on the bottom. I thought it was a really nice, natural, rustic look. So I'm going to add our handle back on. You can cover the handle up with some fabric or some twine or something if you want a decorative look. Now I'm going to be adding this natural crinkle paper. This is from Dollar Tree. I really like the natural rustic look, and I'm just fluffing that up, and then I'm going to continue to add more as needed. Okay, so now it is time to add some treats and fun little gifts to this Easter basket. I'm just gonna layer everything up. My kids all got one of these and they absolutely loved it. They thought it was so much fun. So this would be really fun to use as an Easter egg hunt basket as well. And you can decorate it any way you'd like, really, but I really love the natural rustic charm of this. Okay, so we're gonna make another fun Easter gnome. You're gonna need a jar and a foam cone that will fit the top of your jar. I'm using some hot glue on the top, and then I'll put my foam cone into place. So once the glue has set, I am then going to be covering the lid with some felt. So I'm using some white felt, as you can see, and I'm just measuring out how much I need, and I'll be attaching it using some hot glue. So remember, I'll have the full tutorial for all of these projects listed in a playlist for you in my description box. And I will also have the timestamps for you. So if you want to jump to a specific project within this video, you can just click on the highlighted time or the images that are listed within the description box below. So I've continued to just use some hot glue and trimmed off the felt as needed until I have my cone and lid all covered. So for this one, I left a little bit of a lip, as you can see with the fabric, because I wanted that to overhang over our jar. So I'm going to be using a colored fabric. Now you're probably wondering why I'm layering it twice. Well, this fabric was quite thin, but I really liked the color of it. So I needed to cover my base first because you could actually see through it, especially the darker colored lid. So now I'm just going to go ahead and glue this fabric into place, trim it off as needed, and glue it in the areas to help hold it down into place. So at this point, I have not glued the felt or the fabric to the rim of the lid, and there's a reason why, and I'll show you that in a bit, but I just wanted to let you know not to do that. So I have put our lid back on, and now I have flipped the rim up. Now I'm making a girl gnome, and I wanted to add some pigtails, but I didn't want everything to be on the jar portion. I am attaching it to the inner rim, as you can see right here. And then that way here, it'll still allow us to open up this jar. And I'll show you what we're going to be putting inside here in a little bit, but I want to just show you how we are putting this little sweet gnome together. So you can decorate this sweet little gnome any way you'd like. I am using this pretty eyelet lace around the edge. I thought it would be so pretty for springtime. Okay, so now for the hair. As you can see, this is quite a chunky, fluffy yarn, but it was too long. So I just trimmed that off, and then I've got this really pretty gingham check ribbon that I wanted to use to decorate the pigtails. So I'm going to be using a wood bead for this gnome, and as you can see, there is a little hole in it, so I add glue onto the hole and then just tuck it up underneath the rim of the fabric. So I also have a good playlist of different gnomes that I make, so I will have that listed down in the description box below for you as well if you are interested. So our sweet little gnome is all ready to go and to be decorated. So I'm just using a selection of these Dollar Tree and Dollarama florals that I had in my stash. As you can see, I've got this little box to help to stabilize the gnome while I glue these little embellishments into place. So our gnome is all decorated, and now it's time to fill it up. Use any wrapped treats that you love or a loved one or a friend likes, and you'll just fill up your jar with the assorted treats. Okay, so we're gonna make another Easter gnome. This one is a large cone, foam cone, and you can use any size that you'd like. Again, I'm using some felt to cover it up. It really depends on the type of fabric that you're using. If you're using a thin fabric, then you'll definitely want to start off with some felt. So I'm just gonna trim it off as needed and then continue to glue it down. So I wanted to cover the bottom of this foam cone as well, but I didn't want to use some hot glue. I thought that maybe it would melt. So I'm using some really good clear tacky glue, and I've added a generous amount onto the bottom, and then I'll just trim off the excess felt, and I'll also close up the tip there. So you may be wondering why I'm using hot glue on the sides. The foam cone had a little bit of a coating on it, and I noticed that it wasn't melting when I was applying it. But when I used hot glue on the bottom, it did melt. It was really weird, but anyways. So now I am going to be using this really pretty blue fabric on the cone. And again, you're just going to attach it the same way as our last one. And then remove any of the excess, and again, glue it into place as needed. So I've glued down all the extra little fibers on the bottom, and as you can see, it's quite messy. So I ended up having to go in and covering it all up with another piece of felt. Okay, so once your cone is all covered the way you like it, then you can create your hat. So I am just creating kind of a rounded cone shape, and this is what I'm going to be using as my hat. It is blue felt. So I just roll it and then I measure it. And once I have the size that I need, then I'll glue the edges together and glue it onto our gnome. You just want to make sure that your hat is wide enough at the bottom that you can add your beard, and we are going to be adding arms to this one. So I'm just measuring to make sure that it's good, and it is. So I'm just removing all the excess to create the shape I like. Okay, so I'm using chunky yarn again for the beard. And I just glued it to the inside of the rim of the hat, but it's opposite from the seam. So you'll have to just remember to do that. I'll add a generous amount of glue and then press the fibers into place. So I always keep checking to make sure that everything is fitting together well, and it does. So I'm just going to leave the hat where it is for now, and now we're going to make some arms. So I am just cutting some strips of felt, and then I roll it in on itself or fold it in on itself. Either way works, and you'll just want to glue it all together. So I've decided to add some little hands, and I'm just creating kind of a basic mitten shape. And then before I finish gluing our arms together, I'm going to add these little pieces onto the one end of our arms. Okay, so both arms are done. Now I'm just going to measure them and then cut them down to the length that we need. You can add some wire inside your arms as well if you want them to bend different ways. Now would be the time to do it before you glue these into place. I'm just adding a little bit of extra glue there onto my beard as it was coming off. This one was done before I tied my fiber clumps together. Okay. So now for the arms, I'm going to glue them on the inside of the hat, and you can see it's just to the side of the beard. Okay, so our pieces are all put together. Now I am going to place the hat back onto our cone. I'm going to trim the beard down as needed. It was a little bit too long for this guy, and it also looks a little better because then you can see the fabric that we have on this. So I'm going to use a wood bead again. No particular size, just use any size that you like. So I just tuck that underneath the rim of the hat, and then I'll add a little bit of glue to the bottom of the bead and push a few of the fibers into place to cover up that hole. Okay, so now you can glue everything into place. I always like to start off at the back and then make my way around. Okay, so I wanted this little guy to be holding a little pot of flowers. So I had this wood flower pot in my stash, and I'm coating it with 2 coats of white paint, and then I allow it to dry. So now I'm going to be using these pretty little florals that I had from Dollar Tree and Dollarama, and I'm just going to glue them inside the pot. I always like to start off with some greenery, and then I go in and add the flowers. Okay, so our flower pot is all ready to go, and now it's time to attach the flowers to this little guy. So I'm just gonna glue the pot onto the hands, and this is where wiring the arms would have been a great idea, but I didn't think of it at the time. So I'm gonna glue the pot to the body of the gnome, so that's why I had to separate the beard a little bit. So I'm just gonna attach that again using hot glue, and then I'll attach the arms to make it look like he's holding the pot. So I'm just gonna go in and add some flowers and greenery and add that to the hat. You don't have to do this part. A cute little bow would be nice as well, or any other embellishments that you like. So this is optional, but I decided to add a cute little bird to the flower pot, as you can see right here. I don't know, there was just something about it. I thought it would be really sweet for spring. And there you go, another really pretty gnome for Easter or springtime, and this sweet little jar full of treats for the Easter season as well. First, you're going to need an LED pillar candle from Dollar Tree, these beautiful napkins, again from Dollar Tree from their Spring Fling collection. I am going to be separating the layers of the napkin. I just kind of roll the corner a little bit, and that helps to separate the pieces, and then you can pull them apart. So now I'm just measuring the length of the candle onto the napkin, and then I'm going to cut my napkin to size. There is a bit of a rough edge on the bottom of the napkin there, so I'm just cutting that off, and then I am going to cut down the middle, and it's just the length I need. Just checking to make sure I do have the right amount I need. You could use tissue paper if you can't find some pretty napkins. Now, using some matte decoupage glue, I am going to work in sections and apply the glue to my candle, and then roll the candle onto the napkin as shown. I want to take a moment and welcome you all to CreArtive by Nature, DIY and Decor. My name is Donna. I'd love for you to tap on that thumbs up to let me know that you're enjoying this content. You can gently smooth it out with your fingers, but I don't mind the little bit of wrinkling. I just kind of find that it adds to that nice homey look. And again, I just like to work in sections. Now, don't apply the glue on the exterior at this point, because you will have to trim off any excess napkin, and then you can carry on. Once your napkin is all covered, you can trim off any excess on the bottom as well. Now you can give a coat of the decoupage glue over the entire piece of your napkin that's on your candle. Now you could use Mod Podge, of course, but I prefer this Artist Mind brand I picked up from Michael's, I believe it was last year. I just really like the finish that it gives. So once you have all the napkin decoupaged onto your candle, you can then set it aside and allow it to dry well. Once your candle is dry, then you can decorate it. I thought it would be really fun to glue on these really pretty florals that I picked up from Dollar Tree. They come in all kinds of colors. I just picked the more neutral ones, these off-white and these kind of apricot color. Using some hot glue, I am applying them to my candle. You need wire cutters to trim these pieces down. And then I'm just kind of creating like a garden look. I just thought it would be such a fun, unique, and high-end look for these candles. Dollar Tree has a really nice selection of some different florals, so just use whatever you love. I know these particular florals came in a pink and a purple as well. I think it would be so pretty for your spring decor. Here I am now adding a bit of the greenery. It's a really fun little fern piece. I know Dollar Tree also carries some little fern bushes, so keep that in mind. So now I've got my candle all covered with the florals, and just to finish it off on the bottom, just to hide those raw edges, I am going to wrap the bottom of the candle and florals with some jute twine. I wrap it around several times. You can add a dab of hot glue here and there to help hold it into place. And I like to just tie it off in a knot. I love this candle. I think it's so pretty for my spring decor. Definitely looks high end, and it's all from Dollar Tree supplies. For our next DIY, I'm going to be using this really fun vase, and I'm going to be using a mixture of some off-white and antique white paints along with some baking soda, and I'm going to be applying this paint mixture onto this little vase. Now this paint mixture is left over from a previous project that I had done. And basically you're just mixing some baking soda in with your craft paint into a thicker consistency. It kind of reminds me of chalk paint a little bit. It's actually got a bit more texture. I am now using a really soft, gentle brush now and applying a second coat of my paint mixture, and then I allow it to dry well. As you can see, there's lots of texture, and I love that. Now, I'm not sure how well it's going to hold up being on the glazed finish, so I've decided to apply satin varnish all over my paint finish, and that will really help to set the paint. Once the varnish is all nice and dry, you can then add a little decorative embellishment if you'd like. I'm going to use these rub-on transfers that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut out these leaves. You could use any pattern you like. They have lots to choose from. I just wanted to keep this really nice and simple. So I've cut the leaves out that I'd like to use, and I removed the backing, and using a craft stick, you're going to apply it by rubbing it onto the vase. Now you have to press quite firmly and make sure that you get all the little bits of the leaf pattern onto your vase. I just slowly work my way, making sure that I get all of the bits of the transfer onto my vase. You can gently lift the backing off just to see if you have a connection. And then I am going to seal it off using my varnish. You can then add some beautiful spring florals from Dollar Tree. Some pussy willows would look so cute in here. I love how this turned out. I think it's a really nice modern high-end look, again from Dollar Tree. So for our third DIY, I'm going to be using this square canvas board, and I picked this up from Dollar Tree last year. I'm going to give it a coat of this Deco Art leaf foliage green paint. It's my favorite color right now. I think it's so pretty and fresh for springtime. So I'm going to give a coat to this canvas board and then allow it to dry well. Once the canvas board is all nice and dry, I didn't bother to paint the back. That was just me. Feel free to do so. I'm now applying some of this preserved reindeer moss to the inside portion of this frame. I love the way this looks. I think it really provides a fun and whimsical look and really brings it to the next level. So I'm just using some hot glue and then pressing the moss down into the frame. I've got my frame all filled in with moss, and I did leave a tiny little center empty, but I felt like it just needed a little bit more, so I'm going in and dry brushing some white paint onto the green, and I thought that just made it look a little bit better, just helped everything just to pop a little bit more and again give it that high-end look. So I'm just dry brushing a bit here and there onto the green paint. So once you have the desired look, you can set it aside and allow it to dry. So now I'm going to be using these fun felt coasters that I found in the Spring Fling collection, along with this daisy floral garden. I cut one daisy flower and some leaves from the garland, and now using some hot glue, I'm actually going to attach that daisy to the middle of this coaster. These coasters come in different colors. There was pink, purple, and a darker teal. I'm now going to use some hot glue and attach some of these leaves just underneath the petals of this daisy. And this will create a really fun and beautiful embellishment. So now to put our pieces together, I'm using a wood bead and adding some hot glue, and I'm placing it into the center of the moss where I didn't have any moss attached. And now again, using some hot glue on the back of our flower, I will attach it to the wood bead, and then you have a really fun and beautiful high-end looking spring decor piece. You could add a hook to the back and then hang it on your wall, or as I do, put it on an easel. As always, I would love to know which project was your favorite. I'm starting off with these gnomes that I picked up from Dollar Tree. You'll need some craft paints. I like the DecoArt brand, and I'm using a palette and some paintbrushes. You will also need some gesso. I picked mine up from Michael's. I'm going to start off by removing the tag off the bottom, and then I'm going to be giving these gnomes a coat of the white gesso. Now, I like to use gesso as my primer. Artists use it as a primer on canvases. This will cover up any of the dark paint that I no longer want to see. And the Artist Loft brand from Michael's is a good brand as it's really nice and smooth. So once you've got all the parts covered up with the gesso that you no longer want to use, you can then use some craft paints in the color choices that you like. I am really loving these pretty spring colors. So I've got a pretty light yellow, pink, blue, green, and a white. I've got my water, my paint brushes. You'll need a flat brush and a liner brush, and then you can start to paint. So as you can see, the craft paint goes on really well. You will need to use approximately, I would say 3 coats of paint. Some of them you might need 4. It depends on the consistency of your paint, the craft paint that you use. But I find that actually with the DecoArt brand, I only needed 2 to 3 coats of paint. So it all depends on what type of paint you're using. I'm using the liner brush just to get into the little corners as well as touch up any of the edges. So just continue to paint your gnomes in the desired colors of your choice. So once the gnome is all dry, I am now gonna go in with some black paint and redefine the belt as well as clean up the boots. So I'm just using a liner brush for this as well. So you could have just left the black belt that was originally there. That's totally optional, but I thought I could get a cleaner line if I go back in afterwards. I want to welcome you all to CreArtive by Nature, DIY and Decor. My name is Donna. If you're new, I'd love for you to subscribe to join my community, tap on the bell to keep up to date with everything I have to share. So now I'm just going in and just cleaning up the edges around the boots, and I accidentally got some gesso on the boots, so I'm just cleaning that up as well, and then I will allow that to dry. So I want to redefine the belt buckle as well, so I'm just using this white paint. You could use a silver as well, just any color of your choice. I am also going to use a toothpick, and I'm adding a dot to the eyes. I find that it makes it look a little more natural, as if there's light reflecting. That part is totally optional. So now I'm going to decorate the hats. I'm just adding some dots to this particular hat, and then I'm going to allow it to dry, and I'll be going back in to add some more color later. This hat, I'm just going to add a large little flower to the middle of this hat. You can decorate these any way you'd like. It's a really fun little whimsical touch. And now for this hat, I'm just adding some little flowers all over. Once you are done, allow each of these designs to dry, and then you can go back in and add some more detail. I am really having fun customizing these little gnomes. I think it would make a great little gift if you want to give to somebody, and you can customize them to suit any decor and colors. Once you're done all the details, allow to dry, and then you'll want to go over them with some varnish. This will help the durability of the craft paint to really stick to the gnome, as well as help everything to pop. Aren't these little guys so cute? They are perfect for springtime, and you can display them anywhere in your home. You can even display them outside in the springtime. I would just make sure that it's in a protected area. So for our next DIY, I am going to be using these cute little bunnies that I picked up from a store called Dollarama here in Canada. I am going to give this guy a coat of the gesso as well. It works really good on shiny plastics such as this. Now I found these last year at Dollarama. I think they're available still this year. You can definitely use ceramic bunnies instead. Just use whatever you can find on hand or in your stores. Once the gesso is all dry, you can then paint your bunnies any color you'd like. I am going to use this warm white. I really love this color. And I give the bunny approximately 2 to 3 coats of the paint, and then I allow it to dry well. Once dry, you can then add some details. I wanted the eyes to pop a little bit more, so I am adding some black centers, And then I'm putting a little white dot in the middle. Again, that just helps with that reflective light that pops from eyes. And I'm also adding a bit of pink to the nose. I just felt it just needed a little bit more interest. So I added the pink, and I'm also going to just use a little bit of the warm white just to kind of tone the pink down. So I am going to be giving these a coat of my varnish as well. I end up doing a total of 3 bunnies for this project. These little bunnies are a cute addition to your Easter or spring decor, and I think they look so cute sitting next to the gnomes. So this DIY is something I have done here on my channel before, but I thought I would just show you all again. They are using these cute little foam Easter eggs that I picked up from Dollarama, and they are heavily glittered. So I am giving them all a coat of this warm white craft paint. You could also use a robin's egg blue. That would be really pretty as well. I have them all on toothpicks so I can stick them in the styrofoam and allow them to dry. Now, using some raw umber paint, some water, and a stiff bristle brush, I am going to add some water to the paint, and then I'm going to take the eggs and splatter them with my paintbrush. That will give that speckled egg look. I've used these eggs in a really cute nest DIY that I've done. I will link that video down below for you if you'd like to check that out after the hop. I think these eggs make a really sweet addition to my spring decor, and you can definitely make larger ones if you'd like. I just really like how they turned out. So now I'm using some mushrooms that I picked up from Dollar Tree. These were right next to the gnomes. I, again, am using my gesso, and I am just going to coat the top portion of the mushroom cap. I just wanted to cover up this glaze, and the gesso works, again, very well for this surface. Once dry, you can then use some soft paintbrushes and a liner brush, and you want to use some craft paints of your choosing. I am again using the colors that I used on the gnomes, and I give these mushrooms 2 to 3 coats of the paint. Now, this particular paint I'm using right now is a Craft Smart brand, and I did find that it was a lot thinner than the Deco Art, so I ended up having to put 4 coats of this paint on so you wouldn't see anything from underneath. So if you have a thinner paint like that, feel free to give the gesso 2 coats instead of just the 1. You can see here, this is the Deco Art paint, and it definitely has better coverage. So once my mushrooms are all dry, I am then going to be using these around, kind of like a liner brush, maybe a little wider, and I'm going to add some dots. Another option would be to add some flowers. Now that I think would be really, really cute as well. So I did go over all the dots twice with my craft paint, and now again I'm sealing it all up with my matte Deco Art varnish. It really does help the paint to pop. These mushrooms are such a fun and whimsical addition to your spring decor. I love how these turned out, and they look really, really good next to the gnomes as well as my bunnies. All right, now I'm going to put all those pieces together. Here are all the elements I am going to be using to make a gnome garden. I've got some florals from Dollar Tree, the pieces that I painted, some different types of moss, some bark and some branches. This is some foraged moss here. I like to use natural elements in my decor whenever I can. These are some moss stones, and here's those cute little gnomes and the eggs, and I have the bunnies as well. So I am going to be using this canvas board that I picked up from Dollarama, but you could use a basket or a pot as well. So I'm going to start off by laying out all my moss and lichens, and then I'm going to start to add my pieces in. I just like to layer everything up. I'll move things around too if I need to. If you do this in a pot, you can fill your pot with dirt first, but I kind of like this sort of thing in a tray that I can recreate all the time. Now, this does not have any live plants, but you can definitely make this with living plants as well. To raise some of the items up, I'm using these little stumps. I believe I picked them up from Dollar Tree. I can't quite remember, but you could use any type of block just to raise your pieces, just so that there's different elevations of your decor. Here I am now adding some Dollar Tree florals that I had in my stash, as well as a few branches. I have those little cherry blossoms as well, which I'm going to be using. They are so pretty. I love the color that they are. What I do is just pull off the blossoms and then place them down onto the moss. Now I am adding some pieces of bark. I wanted this to look like it was from the forest. You could definitely add like a gnome house if you have one, or even an Easter tree would be really cute. Now I'm going to add those little mini eggs, and then I am going to show you what it all looks like. I think this is such a fun piece to have for Easter or springtime. I love how everything came together. As always, I like to know which is your favorite project. Leave a comment down below. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. Don't forget to check the timestamps as well as the playlist in the video description, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.